They thought I was gone. I was the silent partner all along. They thought I was gone, and that was exactly what I wanted them to believe, because in the world of business betrayal, the most dangerous move is not fighting back loudly but disappearing quietly while everyone underestimates you. And my name is Adrian Cole, the man they erased from the company I built from nothing, the man they called weak, finished, and irrelevant. But what they didn't know was that my silence was not defeat, it was strategy. And this is a silent partner reveal story that changed everything. At the beginning, everything looked normal. I was the face of the company, the one closing deals, building relationships, and pushing us forward, while Gregory Shaw handled operations and Liam Carter, my so-called best friend, managed finances. We trusted each other, or at least I thought we did, but success changes people, and money reveals true intentions. Slowly I started noticing things, decisions made without me, meetings I was not invited to, contracts signed behind my back. At first I ignored it, telling myself it was just pressure from growth, but deep down I felt it, the shift, the quiet betrayal forming behind closed doors. One morning, everything changed. I walked into the office and felt it instantly. The energy was different, cold, distant, like I didn't belong there anymore. Then Gregory called me into the boardroom, his face calm, too calm. Liam sat beside him avoiding eye contact, and Vanessa Blake, the newest executive, watched me like she already knew the outcome. That was the moment I realized this was not a discussion, it was an ambush. Gregory cleared his throat and said the words that were supposed to end me. Adrian, the board has decided it's time you step away. The company needs new direction. Just like that, no warning, no respect, just a clean cut. They had already planned everything, documents ready, signatures prepared. They wanted me out of my own company. In that moment, I had two choices: fight and lose everything in a messy public battle, or disappear and win in silence, and I chose the second option. I looked at them, smiled slightly, and said, "If that's what you think is best," and just like that, I walked away. No arguments, no resistance, nothing, and that confused them more than anything, because they expected a fight, they expected emotion, but I gave them calm, and that calm made them underestimate me even more. The moment I left that building, they celebrated, they thought they had won, they thought I was finished, a forgotten founder, another story of someone who lost control of his own empire. And that is exactly the illusion I needed, because while they were busy enjoying their victory, I was setting up my comeback, a secret comeback story that would flip everything they believed. You see, before I left, I had already seen the signs, I had already prepared, quietly, carefully. I moved pieces into place, I created structures they didn't understand, agreements they overlooked, and positions they never questioned. I became the hidden ownership they never noticed, the unknown investor behind decisions they thought were theirs. This was not luck, this was strategy, this was a power shift, revenge in motion. Weeks passed, and the company started growing faster than ever, at least on the surface. Gregory became more aggressive, Liam more confident, Vanessa more controlling. They were making bigger deals, taking bigger risks, and believing they were untouchable. But every move they made was being watched, calculated, and quietly controlled from the shadows. They thought they were leading, but in reality, they were being guided. Every major approval, every financial decision, every expansion plan had one invisible hand behind it, mine, the silent partner they never suspected. People started talking, rumors spread about a hidden boss, an unknown force influencing the company's direction, but no one could prove anything, and that mystery only made the story stronger. This became more than just business, it became a shocking identity reveal waiting to happen, a corporate revenge story building slowly, perfectly, and by the time they realized something was wrong, it would already be too late. And if you're enjoying this underestimated genius story, make sure you subscribe, like the story, and stay with me, because what comes next will show you exactly how they lost everything they stole, because they thought I was weak, they thought I was gone, but the truth is, I was never gone, I was just invisible, and in a world where everyone looks for loud power, they never see the quiet one coming. They thought removing me was the beginning of their success, but in reality it was the beginning of their downfall, because the moment I stepped out of that office, they stepped into a game they didn't understand. And this was no longer just a business, this was a controlled narrative, a hidden ownership story unfolding quietly while they celebrated loudly. And as the weeks passed, the company grew faster than ever, deals were closing, numbers were rising, and Gregory Shaw walked around like a king who had finally taken his throne. Liam Carter became louder, more confident, no longer the cautious man I once knew, and Vanessa Blake tightened her grip on every department, reshaping the company into something sharper, colder, more aggressive. They believed they had unlocked a new level of success, but what they didn't realize was that every step forward they took was still inside the structure I built, and now controlled from the shadows. From the outside, it looked like a perfect takeover, a clean break from the past, a story of leaders stepping up after removing a weak founder, and that narrative spread quickly. People said I couldn't handle pressure, that I walked away when things got tough, that I was never meant to lead at that level, and I let them talk. I let the underestimated me story grow, because the more they believed I was gone, the easier it became for me to move without being seen. This was not just a comeback. This was a secret comeback story designed to peak at the perfect moment. Inside the company, things began to shift in ways they couldn't fully understand. Approvals started coming through faster, funding appeared exactly when needed, opportunities opened at the right time, and Gregory started to believe it was all because of his leadership. He called it vision, Liam called it smart financial control, Vanessa called it strategic dominance, but none of them asked the most important question: who was really making this possible? Because behind every major decision was a silent confirmation, a hidden approval linked to structures they never questioned, and that was where the real control lived, invisible, quiet, undeniable. The board began to notice something unusual. An unknown investor had more influence than expected, someone with deep access and quiet authority, but the documents were clean, the structure was complex, and no direct name pointed back to me. I had built layers, protection inside protection, making sure that even if they looked closely, they would only see fragments, never the full picture. This was not just revenge, this was precision, a power shift revenge that moved without noise, without ego, without mistakes. As the company expanded, the pressure increased, bigger deals meant bigger risks, and that is where their real weakness started to show. Gregory became impatient, pushing decisions faster than the system could handle. Liam started bending numbers to maintain appearances, and Vanessa began cutting people who questioned her authority. They were no longer building, they were forcing growth, and forced growth always creates cracks. Cracks I was already watching closely, because every mistake they made gave me more control, more leverage, more power over the very empire they thought they owned. Meanwhile, whispers began to spread inside the office. Employees started noticing patterns. Certain decisions always traced back to the same unknown approval source. Contracts were being altered at the last minute in ways that protected the company from risks they didn't even see. It felt like someone was always one step ahead, like a hidden boss was guiding everything from behind the curtain, and that mystery started to grow into something bigger, a shocking identity reveal waiting to happen. But still, they ignored it, because arrogance blinds faster than ignorance. Sophia Bennett, one of the few people who remained quiet during all this, began to notice the details. She wasn't loud, she didn't challenge authority, but she observed everything: patterns, signatures, timing, and the more she looked, the clearer it became that this was not random, this was controlled, deliberate, intentional. She didn't have proof yet, but she had a feeling, and sometimes a feeling is where the truth begins. Noah Price also started questioning the numbers, not because they were wrong, but because they were too perfect, too aligned, too precise for a company moving this fast under new leadership. But every time he raised a concern, it was dismissed, because success was visible, and visible success hides invisible control. And through all of this, I remained exactly where they believed I was not, inside their system, inside their decisions, inside their growth. This was the silent partner reveal building slowly, piece by piece, and the more they expanded, the deeper they stepped into my control, because I didn't need to stop them, I needed them to continue, to grow, to stretch beyond their limits, because the higher they climbed, the harder they would fall, and that fall would not be an accident, it would be designed, calculated, and perfectly timed. If you are enjoying this betrayal and revenge story, this hidden ownership story filled with power shifts and unexpected control, make sure you subscribe, like the story, and stay with me, because what comes next will expose the truth they never saw coming, the moment when the unknown investor becomes known, when the silent partner steps out of the shadows, and when they finally understand that they were never in control, not for a single moment. By the time the company reached its peak, the illusion of control was so strong that Gregory Shaw truly believed he had replaced me completely. He walked into meetings with confidence, spoke like a visionary, and treated every success as proof that removing me was the best decision they ever made. Liam Carter backed him with numbers that looked perfect on paper, and Vanessa Blake enforced authority with a sharp edge that kept everyone in line. From the outside, this looked like a powerful leadership team, a successful transition, a story of growth after removing a weak link, but underneath that surface, something else was forming, something they could not see, something they could not stop, because this was never just a business story, this was a silent partner reveal unfolding in real time. The company started attracting attention, investors wanted in, competitors started watching closely, and media whispers began to build around the idea of a hidden ownership structure. People were asking questions, not loudly, but enough to create pressure, because no one could fully explain how the company was moving with such precision. Every risk seemed calculated, every loss avoided, every expansion perfectly timed. It didn't look like luck, it looked like control, and control always leaves a trace, even when it tries to stay invisible. Inside the company, the tension began to rise, not because things were failing, but because they were too perfect, and perfection creates suspicion. Noah Price could not ignore it anymore. The financial patterns were too clean, too consistent, almost like someone was correcting mistakes before they even happened. He started digging deeper, following approval trails, tracking decision timing, and what he found didn't make sense. Certain high-level approvals were coming from an authority that didn't officially exist, a shadow layer inside the system, a hidden boss influence that no one had publicly acknowledged. Sophia Bennett saw it too, but from a different angle. She noticed behavior, how certain executives would receive last-minute instructions that changed everything, how deals would shift direction without explanation, how emails would appear with decisions already finalized, and the more she connected the dots, the clearer the picture became. This was not random, this was controlled. Someone was guiding the company from behind the scenes, someone with access, power, and patience, someone who understood the system better than anyone inside it, and that realization started to spread quietly among a few observant minds, creating a low but growing tension that even Gregory could not fully ignore. Gregory tried to dismiss it at first, calling it coincidence, calling it smart systems, calling it his leadership, but deep down, even he started to feel it. The sense that something was not entirely in his control, and that feeling made him more aggressive, more desperate to prove dominance. He began making bigger decisions without waiting for full confirmations, pushing the company faster, harder, believing that speed would secure his position, but speed without understanding is dangerous. And every rushed move he made created small cracks in the structure, cracks that I had already planned for. Liam began to feel the pressure too. His numbers were still strong, but the margin for error was shrinking, and he could not explain how certain financial risks kept resolving themselves before becoming problems. It made him uneasy, but instead of questioning it deeply, he chose to ride the success, because success is comfortable, and questioning it could destroy everything he had gained. And Vanessa, despite her sharp control, started facing resistance from within, not open rebellion, but quiet doubt. Employees began to question decisions, to whisper about the unknown investor, to wonder who was really in charge, and that shift in perception was the beginning of the real collapse, because power is not just about control, it is about belief, and once belief starts to crack, control follows. And while all of this unfolded, I remained exactly where I needed to be, inside the system, inside the approvals, inside the structure they never fully understood. This was the hidden ownership story reaching its most critical phase, the point where the truth begins to surface but is still not fully visible. The perfect moment before a shocking identity reveal, because the most powerful position is not just being in control, it is controlling without being seen, and I had mastered that completely. The board could no longer ignore the situation. Questions were raised, meetings were called, discussions about the unknown influence became more direct, but every time they tried to trace it, they hit a wall, a carefully designed structure that protected my identity while maintaining full control. They were getting closer, but not close enough, and that was intentional, because the reveal was not meant to happen slowly, it was meant to happen all at once, in a way that would destroy every illusion they had built. This was no longer just a revenge success story, this was a complete power shift revenge, a moment where everything would flip, where the people who thought they were in charge would realize they had been following a path I designed from the very beginning, and the closer they got to discovering the truth, the less time they had left before everything changed. If you are enjoying this shocking identity reveal story, this betrayal and revenge journey filled with hidden control and unexpected power, make sure you subscribe, like the story, and stay with me, because what comes next is the moment they finally see me again, not as the man they removed, but as the one who never left, the one who owned everything they built, the one who was the silent partner all along. The day of the reveal did not begin with chaos or noise, it began like any other day, calm, controlled, and predictable, which is exactly how I wanted it, because the most powerful moments are not announced, they arrive quietly and change everything in seconds, and as Gregory Shaw walked into the boardroom that morning, he believed he was about to secure the biggest deal of his career, a major expansion that would place the company at the top of the industry. Liam Carter followed with his usual confidence, carrying numbers that looked flawless, and Vanessa Blake entered last, sharp and focused, ready to dominate the room. None of them knew that this meeting was not about growth, it was about truth, it was about the silent partner reveal that would destroy everything they believed they controlled. The board members were already seated, the atmosphere slightly tense, not because of the deal, but because of the unanswered questions that had been building for weeks, the unknown investor, the hidden ownership, the invisible approvals. It was all about to come together, and as the meeting began, Gregory took charge as usual, presenting the expansion plan with confidence, speaking about vision, leadership, and control, repeating the same narrative he had built since I left, that he was the reason the company had reached this level, that the past was behind them, that the future belonged to him, and for a moment, it almost sounded convincing, until the first interruption came. One of the board members leaned forward and asked a simple question, one that had been avoided for too long: who is the final approving authority behind these decisions? The room went quiet. Gregory smiled slightly, trying to maintain control, and answered with confidence, saying that all decisions were approved through the current executive structure, but the board member did not look convinced. Instead, he placed a file on the table, thick, detailed, undeniable, and said that according to their internal review, multiple critical approvals came from a controlling entity that was not publicly listed, a hidden ownership layer that had final authority over major decisions, and just like that, the room shifted. Liam's confidence dropped for the first time, Vanessa's expression hardened, and Gregory's calm started to crack, because this was no longer a rumor, this was evidence, real, documented, impossible to deny, and before any of them could respond, the door opened, not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to pull every eye in the room toward it, and that was the moment everything changed, because I walked in, calm, composed, and exactly where they never expected me to be again. No one spoke at first, the silence was heavy, almost unreal, because the man they thought was gone was now standing in front of them, not as a guest, not as a former founder, but as something far more powerful, and as I took a seat at the table, I could see it clearly, the shock, the confusion, the realization beginning to form in their minds. This was not a coincidence, this was the truth catching up to them. Gregory was the first to react, trying to regain control, asking what I was doing there, trying to frame me as an outsider, someone who no longer had a place in that room. But before he could continue, I placed a document on the table, calm, precise, and final, and told him to read it carefully, because everything he believed was about to change, and as he opened it, the confidence in his eyes disappeared, replaced by something else, something he had not felt in a long time: uncertainty. The document was clear, structured, and legally undeniable. It outlined the ownership structure, the controlling shares, the silent approvals, every layer they failed to see, and at the center of it all was one name, mine, Adrian Cole. The hidden boss, the unknown investor, the silent partner who never left, and as the realization hit them, the room shifted completely. This was the shocking identity reveal they never saw coming, the moment where every assumption collapsed under the weight of truth. Liam leaned back, speechless, understanding that every number he managed had been under my control. Vanessa's sharp confidence disappeared as she realized every decision she enforced had been allowed by me, and Gregory, the man who believed he had taken everything from me, sat there facing the reality that he had been leading nothing more than an illusion, a system I built, controlled, and allowed him to operate within. I did not raise my voice, I did not need to, because power does not need volume, it needs clarity, and I explained it simply. Every major decision, every expansion, every financial approval had passed through me, every risk they avoided, every success they celebrated, all of it was guided, controlled, and approved by the one person they thought was gone. This was never their company, it was always mine, and they had simply been managing it for me without even knowing. The board did not need more explanation, the evidence was enough. Control shifted in that moment, officially, legally, and completely. This was not just a reveal, this was a power shift revenge executed perfectly, and as I looked at them one last time, I could see it clearly. The fall had already begun, because the moment they understood the truth, they lost everything they thought they had. If you are enjoying this hidden ownership story, this silent partner reveal filled with betrayal and revenge, make sure you subscribe, like the story, and stay with me, because the final chapter will show you how everything they built under my control became the reason they lost it all, because in the end, the biggest mistake they made was believing I was ever truly gone. The moment the truth was revealed, everything changed, not slowly, not over time, but instantly, because power does not fade when exposed, it shifts, and in that boardroom, the shift was complete. Gregory Shaw was no longer the man in control, Liam Carter was no longer the confident strategist, and Vanessa Blake was no longer the untouchable force inside the company. They were now exactly what they tried to make me: irrelevant. And the silence in that room said more than any argument ever could, because this was not just a defeat, this was a complete collapse of everything they believed they owned. I did not rush the moment, I let it sit, I let the weight of the silent partner reveal settle into their minds, because understanding takes time, especially when it destroys your reality. And as the board reviewed the documents again, every detail confirmed the same truth: the hidden ownership was real, the control was mine, and every major success they celebrated was never truly theirs. This was the ultimate betrayal and revenge story, not built on anger, but on patience, precision, and strategy. Gregory tried to speak, tried to regain some form of authority, but his voice no longer carried weight, because authority without control is just noise. He questioned the legality, the structure, the process, but every question he asked had already been answered in the documents in front of him, every angle covered, every detail secured. This was not a move made in reaction, this was a plan built long before they ever decided to remove me, and that realization broke him more than anything else, because it meant that even at his highest point, he was never truly in charge. Liam sat quietly, staring at the numbers he once believed he controlled, now understanding that every financial decision had been guided, corrected, and approved without his knowledge. The confidence he once had was gone, replaced by the harsh truth that he had been part of a system he never fully understood, and Vanessa, for the first time since she joined the company, had no move to make, no strategy to deploy, because control had already been taken from her before she even knew it existed. Elsewhere, the board acted quickly, because once the truth is clear, action becomes simple. Positions were reviewed, authority was reassigned, and within minutes, the structure of power inside the company changed completely. Gregory was removed from his position, Liam's control over finances was revoked, and Vanessa's authority was stripped down to nothing, not out of revenge, but out of necessity, because leadership without trust cannot exist, and they had broken that trust the moment they chose betrayal over loyalty. This was the fall and power shift they never saw coming, the final step in a secret comeback story that had been building from the moment they thought I was gone. And as I stood there, not celebrating, not reacting with emotion, but simply observing, I understood something important. This was never about destroying them, it was about restoring what was mine, about proving that true power does not disappear when challenged, it adapts, it hides, and then it returns stronger than before. Outside the boardroom, the news spread quickly. Employees who once whispered about a hidden boss now understood the truth. The unknown investor had a name, the silent partner was real, and the company they worked for had always been under one consistent control. The reaction was immediate. Respect replaced confusion, clarity replaced doubt, and the entire narrative of the company changed in a single day. This was no longer a story of a founder who failed, this was a story of an underestimated genius who executed one of the most precise power shift revenge moves imaginable. Gregory, Liam, and Vanessa left that room without the power they once held, without the confidence they once showed, and without the illusion they once believed in, because illusions cannot survive truth, and their entire leadership was built on an illusion that I allowed to exist until the right moment, and that moment had now passed. I took my place at the head of the table, not as a returning figure, but as the one who never left, the one who remained in control even when invisible. And as I looked around the room, I knew this was only the beginning of a stronger, smarter, more controlled future for the company, because now, there were no more hidden layers, no more false leaders, only clarity, only structure, only real control. This hidden ownership story, this shocking identity reveal, this corporate revenge story was complete, but the lesson behind it remained simple: never underestimate silence, never ignore what you cannot see, and never believe that removing someone means removing their power, because sometimes, the quietest person in the room is the one controlling everything. And if you enjoyed this silent partner reveal, this betrayal and revenge journey filled with unexpected twists and powerful lessons, make sure you subscribe, like the story, and share it with others who need to understand how real power works, because this was not just a story, it was a reminder that sometimes, the greatest comeback is the one no one sees coming, and the greatest victory is taking everything back without ever raising your voice.